Hello everybody, this is Lara from Pure Elliott Wave with your Monday to Friday update for Bitcoin, Ethereum and XRP. No Solana today. When Jack Frost has time to do Ethereum and takes that off my hands, I'll update Solana for you. Today, first up, let's look at Bitcoin. Daily time frame, we are looking at consolidation still. For the very short term, I had not expected this downward movement that we got on the 13th of April. But it's still within the same consolidation. It's still finding support about 60,700, still finding resistance in a zone about 71,500 to 73,100. Price is consolidating, and now we can identify a pretty good looking rectangle pattern. This is not an Elliott Wave pattern, this is just a classic technical pattern, so the rules aren't as strict as there are for Elliott Wave patterns. Resistance zone, support, price is moving sideways, overall declining to flat volume, and overall some decline in ATR, decline in volatility, although we have seen a little uptick in ATR. About these highs, we've got bearish candlestick patterns. About these lows, we've got bullish candlestick patterns, bearish pattern, bullish pattern, bearish pattern, bullish pattern, and a couple of bullish long lower wicks. About pretty strong technical support, about 60,700. Rectangle patterns are either continuation patterns, so we could see an upward breakout, or they are reversal patterns, so we could see a downward breakout. The bottom line for a consolidation like this is you need to wait for a breakout in order to have confidence in the next direction of the next trend. I still expect it's most likely we're going to get an upward breakout, and one of the big reasons for that is we had all-time highs back here in early mid-March 2024 on a daily, weekly and monthly time frame with a classic technical upward breakout. All of those time frames had support from volume as price closed to new all-time highs, but there's pretty good resistance here, and there was an extreme upward trend, so consolidation has now relieved extreme conditions, allowing for the larger trend to resume. And at the monthly time frame for Bitcoin, the technicals are extremely bullish. Downward movement to that last low did see some push from volume. Sometimes downward movement ends on strong volume like this, like this, like this, and like this. Now we've got an upward movement with weaker volume. Bitcoin can be weak up off its lows because there's pretty strong technical support there. I expect within that rectangle we've probably found support. We're probably going to see an upward swing to resistance. For the short term, there was a nearly reasonable bearish signal because this support line has maybe 1, 2, 3 tests. It's somewhat long held and it's got a shallow slope. It doesn't have too many tests though, so we do have a bearish signal as on balance volume broke below support. I was expecting we were going to get a bullish signal with a break above resistance. That didn't happen. We got a bearish signal and we got some downward movement. As on balance volume comes up, this support line may now provide resistance, may now halt a rise in price. If on balance volume breaks above that purple line, the technical significance of this line would be too low and I'd then have to redraw it like this. But let's leave it like this for today and consider we might see a bit of resistance for price and on balance volume, so we might see a downward session for the current session. ADX is giving us a strong bearish signal. It tells us that Bitcoin is now in a downward trend at the daily time frame. The bigger picture though, remember, does still remain bullish. That hasn't changed, and within the larger bull market there will be deeper pullbacks and consolidations from time to time along the way up. It looks like this is a more time consuming consolidation, and at the end of it ADX is finally caught up with a short-term downward trend. The consolidation has brought RSI down from fairly deeply overbought where it exhibited double bearish divergence, so following that we moved into a fairly time-consuming consolidation. It's relieved extreme conditions, setting itself up for a new trend. Relieved money flows extreme conditions. Money flow and RSI today are both below 50. Overall ATR declining throughout most of the consolidation for the short term. At the end of it for the last few days, now some increase in volatility. That does suggest we might be about to see a downward breakout from the rectangle. We could see a deeper pullback, but look for support 60,700. That has to be broken before we expect a pullback to be deeper. While price remains within that consolidation zone, wait for either an upward or downward breakout. We do not have a breakout yet. The Elliott Wave count for Ethereum today is changed. I am going to see for the short term another first and second wave complete. I had seen this complete down here and I was considering another first and second wave. That At the weekly time frame, that technical idea, or that Elliott Wave count, remains valid, but I think it now has a pretty low probability due to problems of proportion. So now within the impulse of primary 3, I see intermediate 1, intermediate 2 complete here, intermediate 3 a long extension with minor 1 and 2 complete, and now minute 1 and 2 complete. Minute wave 2 technically may not move beyond the start of 1 below 1521.78. Draw a base channel around intermediate 1 and 2 from the start of 1 to the end of 2. Place a copy on the end of 1. The upper edge of that channel provided resistance, initiated the pullback for my minute wave 2. Eventually, if this channel is breached by upward movement, we may see a quick back test of support before price moves up and away. The power of the middle of the third wave should have enough power to break through resistance at the upper edge of that channel. Let's take a look at the daily time frame. We're looking from this consolidation here within the middle of minute wave 1. I see it as 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. I see these fourth waves, more brief and shallow than their counterparts second waves. That's pretty common behavior for a cryptocurrency, and so I'm seeing a first wave complete at the last high for Ethereum. And now a zigzag completing lower for a second wave correction. A, double zigzag for B, short impulse for C has moved below the end of A, and it finds beautiful support perfectly at the lower AC trend line. This channel is drawn using Elliott's technique from the start of A to the end of B, a parallel copy placed on the end of A. Let's just put that absolutely perfectly on right there. C has fallen ever so slightly short of the lower edge of that channel. This may provide support and see the end of minute wave 2. This wave count now expects a third wave up at multiple degrees. This is so far a counter trend movement, and so far it has a really obvious 3-wave look. This looks like an impulse. This looks like a correction. The larger picture for the Elliott Wave analysis still remains the same. Technicals for Ethereum, it's essentially moving sideways in a consolidation. Support's still about 3,050. Resistance now eventually 3,680. Let's get rid of this because that's no longer reasonable. So we've got resistance 3,680, support about 3,050. An overshoot of that, we've got a bullish reversal pattern from the 14th of April and a bullish piercing pattern, but it doesn't have push from volume. For cryptos, that's not a deal breaker. The bullish patterns don't always have support from volume, but this does suggest, in conjunction with these two bullish long lower wicks, that we're probably going to continue to find support finally about 3,050. Let's see if it can break above resistance at 3,680. It might be able to do it this week, but it might take a little bit longer. Downward movement down to the last low had an increase in volume. That doesn't mean price has to continue lower. Sometimes at the end of downward movements you do see an increase in volume. We saw it here and here. We may have seen it again here. For Ethereum, we don't have a bearish signal from on-balance volume. We don't have a bullish one either. It's in a consolidation, just like prices, with a downward bias. ADX for Ethereum has finally caught up with the fact that there's a short-term downward trend. It tells us there's a downward trend. We could see lower lows. This consolidation and pullback has pulled RSI down from deeply overbought well below 50 now, setting itself up for a new trend. It's pulled money flow also from overbought, exhibiting bearish divergence, so we've got a pullback, which is a normal part of a healthy bullish run. To the low, ATR showing some increase, some volatility returning to the market. This suggests that the pullback may not be complete, but the lower edge of that Elliott channel, a complete Elliott wave structure, I'll go with that with a little bit more weight. I expect the pullback could be complete. I'd like to see some strength up off that low to really have confidence in that view though. At the weekly time frame, I'm changing the XRP Elliott Wave count. I had intermediate wave 2 complete here, but it was really brief and shallow, which has always been a bit of a problem. That problem has now unfortunately been resolved. Intermediate 2 is now longer lasting and a little bit deeper. It's now a slightly better correction of this leading diagonal of intermediate 1. So we've got a leading diagonal up here and a double combination over down here, with Y moving just a little bit slightly below the end of W, and now 2 taking up more time and having better proportion to 1, and that's the purpose of a combination. Here the combination is a zigzag for W, X, and then a flat correction for Y. The combination has taken up time, giving intermediate 2 better proportion to 1. Draw a best fit channel around this, from this high to this high, place a copy on this low. If we do see continued downward movement, then I would expect support at the lower edge of this channel. But if I've got the structure correct, and if this structure is going to have a normal look for a combination, it should be over there, because the purpose of the second structure in a double is to take up time and move price sideways. In order to achieve that purpose, the second structure in the double usually ends about the same level as the first. In this case, it's pretty close. 0.4309 is pretty close to 0.4456. Technically, intermediate 2 may continue and may not move beyond the start of 1 below 0.2794. A word about triples. Triple zigzag are uncommon but not rare, but triple combinations are extremely rare. If I've got this right, this should be complete here or very soon, because for intermediate 2 to continue as a triple, the third structure would be labelled minor Z. It'd have to subdivide either as a flat or a triangle, and triples are very, very rare, despite the number of times you see them labelled in work online calling itself Elliott Wave. Let's take a look at the daily time frame. The high of intermediate 1, this point up here. I've taken some time today to do some details on the structure of intermediate wave 2. It has a pretty good fit. Zigzag for WX, flat correction for Y. My only concern is minute wave C would have to have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. There'd have to be a 3, 4, 5 in here. This could be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. We couldn't need one more low to complete the structure of minute wave C. I haven't taken the time to look at that at the hourly time frame today. I've run out of time, but I will have a look at that later and draw a conclusion about, is it over here or are we going to get one more low? Technicals at the daily time frame. Quite a while ago I noted this pennant pattern and I calculated a target from it at 0.4437. Back here I said I thought it had essentially failed, and we were probably not going to get movement down to that target, but we did. And on this low here, 0.4309, slightly exceeded. So the pennant did work in the end. I thought that this upward movement meant that it probably wasn't going to work. On the way up now, look for resistance at 0.54 to 0.55, bit of a zone, then 60 cents, and above that 0.675. So far though, now looking for support about the 0.46 area. Downward movement comes with an increase in volume. Sometimes that's what you see about lows. Saw it here, we saw it here, we've seen it before. A little bit of an increase here. Just because volume is increasing as price moves lower doesn't mean it has to continue, but it certainly could. We've got a bearish signal from on-balance volume for XRP as well. That signal could now be resolved with a continuation of some downward movement after the signal. ADX is giving us a very strong signal. Unfortunately for XRP, it's very, very bearish. The Elliott Wave count expects that low could be in here or with one more low, but the classic technical analysis is not offering good support to the Elliott Wave analysis at this time for XRP, unfortunately. And that brings us to a problem I keep outlining. These lows are really hard to identify, and really often at cryptocurrency lows you expect price to continue on lower, and it just doesn't, because they can be really weak up off their lows, and it might only be days or weeks after the low that you finally see some good upward strength and you call the low in place. RSI has just reached oversold in the last few days. Let's have a look and see how often that happens for XRP. Not very often, and it does tend to be associated with lows. So we could have the low in place now because RSI has reached oversold. It doesn't tend to do that very often. ATR starting to show an increase with downward movement. We could be seeing one more low for XRP before it's finally complete. That's it from me with your update today. I hope everyone had a lovely weekend.